Could you tell us a bit more to me and to the students, your background and what you are doing at the moment?
Okay, at the moment I am running a small company with 8 associates, and our purpose is to continue to spread the word about recovery to everyone, and to teach a method for supporting people in their mental health recovery. And we call the approach the Common Ground approach, and it helps practitioners, whether it be psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, etc., to learn to use software and other technologies to support people in their recovery. And so we have an online recovery library where people can kind of do one-stop shopping to be able to get reliable information about recovery. And we also run a software program that's used by about 30,000 people around the United States to support, to help to amplify people's voice during psychiatric medication consultations. Very often these are very rushed appointments, and many people feel that, oh, just take your medicines as I prescribe them. And we believe that people should have a voice and a choice through shared decision making, and be able to come to decisions and get the treatment that helps people progress with their life. And so we build that software and make it available and train people to use it. And I also give a lot of lectures on recovery, and I work with my colleagues in my company to develop all kinds of videos and materials that help to spread the good news about recovery.
Okay, and is this in line with the program to support shared decision making?
Yes.
This paper.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. 30,000 people used it already, you said.
Well, yes, in about 70 different sites, 70 different psychiatric care clinics across the country.
Wonderful. And you call all this a common ground?
Yes.
Why?
Because after all these years, I've been doing this work for about 30 years now, and, I think that it is the common ground of our shared humanity that is the greatest hope for discovering and being able to work with people in ways that are truly healing. It's recognizing that those of us who've been diagnosed with a mental illness are not the other or some strange life form, but that we have the common ground of our shared humanity. And if we can find that common ground and meet as human beings, I believe we're off to a good start in terms of care that truly is helpful.
Yes. I think I recognize here one of your recommendation of your famous 1988 paper. This one?
Yes.
And towards the end, you mentioned that it might be good for clinicians to also acknowledge their own sensibility and vulnerability for this kind of a common ground.
Yes.
And were you surprised all the attention this paper got over the years? Doesn't take much that we follow this paper when we Google recovery, history of recovery. Right away, it's Pat Deegan, 1988.
Yes. Well, I think that the contribution of the paper is significant, and I think that the point that I make is so simple and so obvious that we don't get fixed the way a car gets tuned up, right? It's a different process, and I make this, I take this notion of the lived experience, right, which has become a very common term now. But I recently wrote a blog about where I found that term. And I was trained when I was working on my doctorate in clinical psychology in a particular discipline called existential phenomenology, or psychology as a human science. And And of course, it was from phenomenology that I learned this term, lived experience, that as a human scientist, I was interested in studying truly human phenomena, not the way individuals might study the physical world or the laws of nature, but rather psychology as a human science. And so I think a powerful example is some people would go about studying the heart and study it as a pump, as an anatomical phenomena, and that we superimpose that idea on the human heart through science. But a phenomenologist is interested in studying the lived heart, the heart that breaks, the heart that grows cold, the heart that soars, heartache, the human heart, the heart as we live it every day, the lived experience of the human heart. And so I took this idea of the lived experience in which I had been trained and said, you know, those of us who have been diagnosed and have gone on to build a life with meaning and purpose and with joy and, you know, we have a unique experience that we bring to treatment setting. And clinicians are not often trained to view us as partners, as people with our own resources and wisdom that we are bringing to the table. And so for me, the power of that paper was introducing the term lived experience and saying that the first task in working with people is to find that common ground, for the clinician to find their recovery partner. When people first present to services, clinicians are trained to be focused on the complexity of the presentation, to look for signs and look for symptoms and look for the problems.
And they take notes.
And they take the notes. But the search to see past the complexity to who is the person here that I can partner with in order to begin that journey to wellness, healing, and recovery, that's the point that the paper is trying to make. So it was as if, I don't know, it was so obvious,
yes,
and yet and so basic, and yet we hadn't really quite had it that clear. And I think that was the contribution of the paper.
Mm-hmm. And also, right away you start with it's a parallel with a physical impairment.
Yes. So that was very much a part of what I was doing at that time in my life. I was helping to build what are called cross-disability coalitions with people who had mobility impairments, people who were blind or visually impaired with sensory impairments. And I was very involved in the disability rights movement because at the time we were trying to get the Americans with Disabilities Act passed, which finally got passed federally here in the 1990s. So at the time I was working with and meeting activists and very progressive thinkers in the disability rights movement. And for us at the time, the term psychiatric disability put us in solidarity with other groups. And actually, when you put us all together, there are 40 million Americans with disabilities. And that's a powerful voting bloc. And we were realizing that we had power in these numbers. And I think fewer people are comfortable with the term psychiatric disability in the year 2017. But in 1988 and 87, that was a very empowering notion that we could get equal right and basic civil rights under the law and be protected from discrimination under the law. And that's what we were after. And so the person I describe, and I do cringe a little bit at my language now, the disabled man, but at the time, it's my friend Charlie. My friend Charlie Carr is the man I'm writing about, but it was a very energizing, eye-opening, I think, and wonderful exploration as we began to realize that once we put our labels aside, those of us, viewed by our culture or society as disabled, actually had more in common with each other. We didn't have to silo ourselves. Oh, mobility impaired. Oh, psychiatrically disabled. No, we could find the common ground of our shared humanity, and through doing that, realize that we had a lot more in common, and if we united, we had a greater power.
And do you suggest that recovery principles and values, which are now fairly well known in mental health? I have colleagues here that are discovering this. At University of Montreal, they are heading towards patient partnership. To have any patient should be at least partner of her own care, at least. And to them, my colleagues in the family medicine, for example, are discovering recovery and peer mentorship. And they say, well, maybe there's no reason that recovery could not apply also to typical physical conditions.
Yes, it's a good parallel, I think, and it works in many ways, and it allows room for differences. But yes, this is important to discover and to recognize that ultimately what's disabling are the barriers that our culture or society puts between us and where we want to be. So poverty is disabling, and for a person with a mobility impairment, perhaps a flight of stairs is what's disabling. A person with a spinal cord injury is perfectly able to get about if there are ramps. And that's the accommodation that's required. And I think that one of the places that I've taken this with, for instance, the software, the Common Ground software that we've built is, imagine going into a psychiatric care clinic for a routine medication check, but that day you may be hearing voices, or I might be very, very anxious or very depressed. I can use a computer that will help me prepare to organize my thoughts and get ready for that appointment. And it's an assistive technology, right? That helps to amplify my voice so that my psychiatrist, my psychiatric care provider can hear me, my concerns, and how I want treatment to help me. I think a very significant paper I just had published in Psychiatric Services just this year is about a phenomena or something that I created called power statements, right?
Power statements.
Yes, power statements. And power statement, in the software, we help people prepare these statements to their psychiatrist or to their therapist or to their nurse, to their case manager. And a power statement does three things. It says who I am as a person, not a patient. So it says, hey, I'm a mom, and I'm a businesswoman and an entrepreneur, and oh yeah, I have a diagnosis too, but I'm a person, not just the patient. Second thing the statement does is it says how I want treatment to help me. So I'm never just interested in symptom abatement, symptom reduction. It's always in the service of something, so I can. So so the most important thing in my life is being a mom. When I'm depressed, I can't be a mom. And the third part is, doctor, please help me find a medicine or a treatment that will help me be the best mom I can be. Mm-hmm. So it's treatment, and it's an N of one kind of statement. These statements are power statements. They're 3 sentences long. They're very concise. They're very scalable. Psychiatrists and other care practitioners really like them because they get to know a person quickly and they understand immediately what the goal of treatment is. But what I find is truly a lack of common ground routinely between a care provider and an individual because there's no shared vision of where treatment is supposed to go. My goal for the patient is blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Well, no. What's the patient's goal for treatment? And how does the individual get their voice amplified in a way that in the busy kind of hectic schedule of routine mental health care, that the clinician can hear this goal for care? So that's what power statements are about. And we published a little study about how effective they are. It's in Psychiatric Services, 2017. I can send you the link to it.
Okay, please do.
But in other words, I have come to the conclusion that it's great to go out and give talks and lectures, but that people get inspired and then they go back into the culture of their organization and there's like an undertow and they pretty much go back to doing what they were doing. And so I've put my time and energy into building tools because I think that tools that are embedded in the care pathway are what change clinicians' behaviors. And what has really been of concern to me, deep concern, is the proliferation of electronic health records, which are built very much by almost no stakeholder involvement in the creation of these tools. And these tools become the sort of the template, and they're created as people take paper forms, old paper forms, and convert them into a digital format, right? Recreate the same old, same old, same old. Here was this extraordinary opportunity to embed a whole new, ask yourself the question, what would happen if the voice of the individual were at the heart of an electronic health record? And I don't mean a patient portal. I mean right in the clinician's face. What would the redesign of an electronic health record look like if the individual and what matters to the individual were at the heart of it? And that's the question I've taken on and created, a prototype. I receive no government funds. I receive this bootstrapped all the way, and yet we're doing it, right? And I think it's critically important because so an example might be if I'm a person in recovery from opioid addictions and I am going into a surgery, I have very real concerns about my pain management protocol. And I want that, my voice, my concerns, my preferences at the front page, on the landing page of my electronic chart, so that my physician sees that I'm a person with a voice and a choice about my care, about my pain management.
Yeah.
To me, this is the health record that matters, not the ones we've got today, which have just replicated the same old practice.
So to you, this is a great opportunity, not simply to have the regular information that used to be on a paper translated into the electronic data.
Yes.
It's a fantastic historical opportunity to also include the human. Even though it's a very much electronic, maybe it's also time to record the voice and the concerns of patients.
Exactly.
But have you been able to observe from clinicians the difference with your study with the Common Ground software?
Yes, well, I think for instance, when the American Psychiatric Association came and saw what we were doing, they awarded us the Gold Achievement Award for Psychiatric Innovation in Psychiatric Services. They're very, very impressed. They're saying this is the way it should be done.
Okay, yeah.
When we talk with the electronic, the big companies that make the electronic records that everybody buys, they say to us, the patient doesn't pay us.
Hmm.
The health systems pay us. And the health systems build it for the doctors.
Hmm.
They say patients don't pay.
But maybe doctors are becoming more interested.
Maybe. We'll see. But I'm afraid the window is starting to close. These things have really begun to, it's a window of opportunity. It's a David and Goliath challenge. And we're showing that it can be done. But as they say to us, the patient doesn't pay. So we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. Also, in your experiment at the Decision Support Center, right? It's a
Yes.
run agency. This is where people fill out their electronic questionnaires.
No. It's actually, for instance, right in the psychiatric care clinic. So imagine, we take what was the waiting room. We get rid of the waiting room. We say there's no time for waiting in modern healthcare. We need to get prepared to participate. Our lives depend on it, quite literally. So we get rid of the waiting area and the old magazines, okay? And we put in computer kiosks and paid peer specialists who are specially trained to provide peer support to help people get ready to have a new kind of conversation with their care provider. And so part of what happens is that peer specialists, peer supporters greet people coming into the Decision Support Center. And there's a welcoming smile and offer the person a cup of tea. People arrive a half hour before the appointment with the doctor. So we say your appointment starts at 10. You'll see your doctor at 10:30. Between 10 and 10:30, you'll be preparing for your time with the doc. Then the peer asks the person to sit at the kiosk, and together or alone, they put on a headset and they move through the program on a touch screen. They can listen to the program because it speaks to them. They can watch videos of other people in recovery from addiction, from health concerns like diabetes, or they can watch recovery from schizophrenia, 3-minute videos. People love those. They answer questions about how I'm doing, both in terms of my physical wellness and my psychiatric concerns. They present their power statements, how I want treatment to help me, how I'm a person and not a patient. And all of this information is crunched down into a 1-page health report that prints out, that I can see and interact with, but that my doctor can see on the screen, or my case manager can see on the screen as well. And then underneath the whole thing is a gigantic library that we've built. So for instance, if I had the question, which antipsychotic medication has the highest likelihood for causing diabetes, heart disease, and weight gain? It's a question many people have. Can you imagine being able just to pull up a short, user-friendly video meant for everybody that just lays that out, right? Or if you had never seen a person who had successfully had a pregnancy while taking medication, while taking a psychiatric med, you can go into the library and find all this information about pregnancy, videos, pregnancy, and can I still take methadone if I'm pregnant, and real people talking about that. And so when you go in to see the psychiatric care provider or your therapist, you're empowered with new knowledge, with information that you want. So now you can truly, there's the common ground. Now we can meet Now we can have a different kind of conversation. And so the peer supporters are specially trained to listen, provide technical support, yes, but more so listen to, oh, you're thinking about pregnant. Did you see that we have this information? Are you interested? Or you can come out after the appointment and spend more time with peer staff going over stuff that you want to know more about. So everything about how to get more benefits to how to be a self-advocate to how to, eat less salt, what you're looking for, you can find in there.
And how did the clinicians react?
They're all over the place. They really like, many clinicians really like that people are more activated, empowered, and they get much more involved in their own self-care. Because another thing that everybody that uses the software does is they are assisted, peer staff help them discover what we call personal medicine.
Yeah.
And personal medicines are the things we do to support ourselves, the things that give our lives meaning and purpose. So I use the example of being a good mom. That's powerful medicine. It puts a smile on my face. It gives meaning and purpose to my life. It's why I do what I do, being a good mom. And that's so important. Yes, it's so important. And so everybody using the software creates or is helped to discover their personal medicine, and the doctors see it. So if my therapist sees it, and my case manager, and one of the changes we see is that when emergency service, if you call emergency services because you're in crisis, of course they ask, are you taking your psychiatric meds? But they also ask, are you using your personal medicine? Because if you're not using your personal medicine, something's off, right? Every time I come to clinic, I fill out my health report and I say, yes, I've been using my personal medicine. And so what we see over time in our research is that people's use of personal medicine in their own life increases over time. And that's a beautiful sign of activation and engagement, right? In one's own self-care, because the vast majority of care happens outside of the clinic in the context of our lives. So we get everything from outright resistance from, I actually had a psychiatrist say to me, I do not want my patients knowing about side effects. They come in here, they know all about the side effects. I said, damn right they do. You bet. I mean, so it's from that extreme to, I love this, I must have it, to people on the fence who say, well, we'll see. And then slowly they begin to see the power of it. We have one large health system, a hospital system in New Jersey that uses it with about 3,000 individuals a month. There are 8 residents, third-year rotation, third-year residents who use it, and 3 attendings. And they've reduced both emergency room admissions and are reducing no-shows. People want to come to clinic more, and their rehospitalization rates are also reduced through the use of the software. So it seems to be helpful, and it's very it's just very empowering. And peer staff are the key to it all. Yeah. They make the thing shine. It's wonderful.
They make the waiting room welcoming first.
Get rid of the waiting room. Make it a decision support.
Waiting, but is that room?
Yes.
No longer for waiting. Is to prepare yourself to communicate and to express your expectations.
Yeah.
And do they provide support after the clinical encounter?
Yeah, so very often the therapist or the doctor will come out with the individual and say, Joe would like to learn about some eating disorder support groups in the area. Could you help them find one? Or something like that. So the clinical staff begin to rely on the peer staff to do the follow-up with the person, to extend the appointment in ways that they can't, given their limited time with people. So the peer staff become part of the team.
Yes. And that's maybe some of our students will play that role eventually.
Yeah.
Some are not experienced in that role. Some are naturally maybe more prepared. But if we come back to personal medicine, it will be difficult for a peer to hear from someone is helping that. For instance, my personal medicine is I got drunk this weekend.
Right. So we have very strong fidelity criteria, and a very and in order for personal medicine to be personal medicine, it has to meet our fidelity criteria. And we have a one-page form that we teach peers and others to use so that people get personal medicine. So personal medicines are the things I do, not anything I take. So you might love your St. John's wort and add a little NyQuil to it at night, but that is not personal medicine, nor is the alcohol you're drinking. A lot of people will say, it's my cigarettes, and no, that's something you take. But let's talk about, talk to me about a time, I step outside away from the group. So maybe it's the taking personal space, and it begins to help people think about, most people were able to help find personal medicine with no problem at all. But what you take, eating chocolate doesn't count as your personal medicine.
Because for maybe some clinicians, they would disagree that maybe you shouldn't encourage people to do things like that.
We sometimes, not very often, we say that for many of us, the pathway into recovery is finding the right balance between the things I do and the medicine I take. And what we do is we raise our self-care and the things that matter in our life to the level of being medicine, right? And we say there are two kinds of medicine that are often active in recovery: the pills we may take and the things that we do. And that very often what happens, what makes for unsuccessful treatment, is if walking my dogs is powerful medicine because it lightens me up and I just walked my dog this morning, and it puts me out in nature with my pups, and I laugh at how silly they are. It gets my day off to a nice start. That's powerful medicine. If I'm taking and been prescribed a psychiatric drug that so dampens my energy that I cannot use my personal medicine, my psychiatric medicine is working against my recovery. That's not right. We need to find the balance between a medication that we take and the things that we do, which are also medicine. And together there should be a synergy. That's how recovery happens.
Okay.
One does not have to replace the other necessarily. Some people, I am not one of them, but some people are able to discontinue psychiatric medications and do very well. I use psychiatric medicine in my recovery this much, and I have this much personal medicine. You know what? You see? So personal medicine is more than just a coping strategy. Coping strategies are very generic. Personal medicine is highly personal. And so we help people discover their personal medicine, and a most amazing thing happens. People say, I never knew something good could come from within me. So a woman I was talking to, she'd been in care for a very long time. She was diagnosed with chronic schizophrenia, the usual. But she was very active in taking care of, she was a grandma, very active in taking care of her grandson, a toddler, so that her daughter could go to work. And she said, well, I always just did that, but I didn't know it was medicine. And I said, wow, it is medicine. I said, and it's, it gives your life so much meaning. And she said to me, I never knew something good could come from me. I never knew anything good could come. There's something good in me. There's something wise in me. And I said, yes, there is.
It's so powerful.
Yes, it is. And what's interesting is that, many clinicians fail to ask people, what do you already know how to do that helps? And many, many clinicians fail to ask people, what matters in your life? What are the things that put a smile? We're so, as clinicians, so deficits oriented and so trained to looking at problems that we forget that there's a person in the room with us who has their own resilience. We forget to approach the person as not the problem, but part of the solution.
And we were discussing that maybe the window is narrowing down from typical doctors, but maybe the presence of a peer worker can at least help the doctor if he's not doing it by himself, asking what puts a smile on your face. The peer can do that. And make sure that the doctor is informed of that somehow.
Yes.
So they work together eventually.
Yes. But what's critically important, and this is, you should check out my blog on my website, okay? Because I have a number of recent articles about the role of peer practitioners.
Okay.
And because one of the great dangers is that when peer supporters are working in integrated clinical settings, that they become assimilated into clinical culture. And that's not good. No. We don't want peers referring to people by their diagnosis or prescribing something to a peer. And we need to be careful to help peers remain peer and not slip into becoming junior social workers, kind of, and that's very challenging. So in my blog, I kind of laid out some of the differences and some of the overlap between clinical perspectives, peer perspectives. And this is very important, this distinction. But it can be done. To join, maybe, again, to join together as peers, as peer workers, to build this capacity and be sure that there are so many of us that we have this power. Yes. And eventually between Quebec and USA and throughout the world. Yes, throughout the world. So thank you so much, Pat. It was wonderful and very for the beginning of this new class with your papers and the one of 1988. It's a great beginning to us, and we'll inform you of what we're doing with this precious expertise and experience you shared with us today. Yes, and if there's ever room where you'd like some training for your new peer supporters in these techniques of the Common Ground approach, which are very peer-oriented, you let us know, and we do run academies and stuff to help train peers. So okay. Feel free to be in touch, okay? It was good meeting you. Yeah. Okay. Always nice to meet a friend of Larry and John's. Okay, okay. All right. Good company. Have a good day. Thank you. You too. Bye.